All right, welcome back, everybody, to the brain injury discussion. This is your host, Jay, and today we're going to be looking at a little bit of a different topic than what we usually cover. Usually, we're covering stuff like anatomy, maybe therapies, maybe pharmaceuticals, maybe uh, a variety of topics, but it's really come to my attention that maybe we should talk about the careers and professions, shall we say, um, that have this high incidence of brain injury. And uh, you might be shocked by what we find. And like always, I would encourage you to look up the sources. They'll be in the description below, and as well as the last slide and on the bottom of the screen. Um, and also, we would appreciate a thumbs up as well as a subscription. Maybe leave a comment if you think that, or maybe you feel like your profession is a brain injury prone profession. But with that being said, I think we've got a lot to cover here. So let's get into this. First off, one of my old professions, the military. And you might be thinking, well, Jay, that's kind of an obvious one, right? Well, it is, but this 2023 study, again, it'll be in the bio down below, but this 2023 study showed that 27%, that's over one in four, um, had a traumatic brain injury across all professions. And when you think about military, you're thinking about fighting and combat professions, but there was more there than just combat professions. We're talking about the other stuff, but that generally speaking, over a quarter of the military, or at least the quarter of the people they studied, had traumatic brain injury. And so, what are we looking for when we are like talking to people about brain injury? Well, um, when you're talking to them, especially on Veterans Day, you can tell them they're usually wearing a hat of some kind. Um, Ask them what their profession was in the military. If they say infantry or combat arms, that is probably one of the highest incidences of brain injury, especially in infantry, combat arms, artillery, combat engineers. The list goes on and on. Or if you are assigned to an infantry unit. You also saw a lot with electrical, mechanical. The military does use some heavy equipment, and so that one's pretty high too. Also, if you were in the Navy or let's say Coast Guard, if you were on the ship, chances are you were at a risk of a concussion because if you've ever been on a ship, you might see that, oh, this is tight, confined spaces. This is all extremely compact. And what it really boils down to is that if you are on or around any of these, you are more prone to get a brain injury or a concussion than you would being in an office like I am. We're also going to talk, think about the service supply and technical fields with supply. You got heavy machinery, some of the technical stuff, including like mechanics, and also service. You're dealing with lots of equipment, lots of supplies. Um, all of that. So think logistics in the military as well. I might be a little biased because I was in the logistics battalion, but I can speak that generally speaking, the military puts you very at prone for having a traumatic brain injury um, at a young age too, especially before your brain finishes that development around the age of 25. So most people in these professions that are on this slide are below the age of 30, and a majority of them are below the age of 25. So keep that in mind when you're talking to people about brain injury, especially for us brain injury case managers. Might be good to know that there are certain fields within a field. Um, like the combat arms, like infantry, like maybe you were a medic assigned to that unit that was in combat arms. All that kind of ties into play. So I could stay on this slide forever, but there's always more. And that's why I think this is a discussion that we should have. Construction. So obviously, the military is a very prone place for uh, brain injuries, but what about the civilian world? Well, we have constructions, and this article down here, very interesting article. They found that the smaller the company and the older the workers, the more at risk they were for brain injury. And the highest percentages or the highest incidence really came from structural work, iron and steel, and roof, which the roof kind of makes sense if you think about it because you're up above ground or above the flat plains. So those are the ones that are most at risk. If you are on a roof, if you fall from that roof, that would probably produce at least a concussion, probably more. If you're working with heavy materials like iron and steel, accidents do happen even in the safest environments. And that's something that maybe we should think about. So, as a brain injury case manager, when I'm talking to someone, I kind of want to know what their profession was. I kind of want to know what their background is. And maybe they worked construction and maybe they fell off a roof. If they fell off a roof that was over like maybe 6 feet, that could lead me to believe that, hey, maybe there's a concussion there. But just like the military and just like every field, there's this thing called personal protective equipment, which is required by law. So if you ever heard about OSHA or Occupational Safety and Hazard Administration, they require that you wear these things called hard hats on construction sites. And although they're not meant to be the stopgap for everything, they have been improved over recent years to require shock absorbance, or at least something to add that extra layer or measure of protection to the brain. So, again, hard hats. These gentlemen here are wearing them on a construction site, and it's probably a good idea to wear your protection. You're supposed to wear protection when you're doing something dangerous. And the same thing applies to the military community too, except that kind of protection is a little different. But this is still kind of the same idea of we do need to protect ourselves. So, again, construction, high incidence, very dangerous job, especially for brain injuries. So, I think that's something we should talk about is okay, people who work on the roof of these, giant construction projects, they're they're definitely at risk. So, but that wasn't it. We got more. If you are a first responder, you're at risk for brain injuries, such as a firefighter. We do love firefighters here. They're wonderful people. Police, the same thing. And same thing with EMS. So these professions deal with a lot of emergencies, a lot of dangerous situations. And so this article down here, again, sources in the description below, the likelihood over a career was 75%. And you think about it, it's like, okay, what about the firemen? Well, going inside a burning house, there's a lot of things that are going to be burning, and not only smoke inhalation, but we're also talking like damage being done to the structure while it's on fire to where it falls. What about police? Well, they have to fight bad guys sometimes. They have to do a very dangerous job, and that puts them at risk. And you might be thinking, well, those two, but what about the EMS guys? What about people who work emergency services? Well, I mean, they have to pick up a lot of heavy things. They have to deal with combative people. The list goes on and on and on. And that's why if you're talking to someone as a brain injury case manager, you're getting a little bit of background. Maybe this is something that might have caused a brain injury to someone, or maybe you're just talking to people, remembering, okay, what is brain injury? First responder can definitely have brain injuries. In fact, it's likely, according to this article, is likely. And again, this article specifically notes the secondary effects of, partly working in or being called to such a field like first responding, which is depression and anxiety can be either amplified or it could be caused by a brain injury. So keep that in mind. And obviously, they deserve our respect. We should definitely appreciate the dangerous jobs that they do. Transportation. Now, if you are like me and drink morning coffee, that coffee goes from the coffee farm on to a truck, which goes to the store where I go pick it up. So transportation and logistics, warehouses. So basically, it's a transportation and cargo industry general. They are at risk for brain injury via multiple ways, really, but um, noted especially that they do have hazmat or hazardous materials. Um, we're also talking about transportation via railroads, roads and trucks and air travel. So, if you are in any one of these wonderful machines here, You got to be extremely careful because they are, in fact, very big, very heavy, and the size of the materials that are carried by this heavy equipment are massive. Sometimes they're measured in tons or hundreds of tons, especially when it comes to railroads. We're talking about professions with long hours, isolated work, and sometimes variable hours where for example, the pilot that's in here needs to be able to get that full night's rest. He needs to be on top of it when he's carrying um, a number of passengers or a number of cargo. Same thing with those who are operating trains and trucks. And so, what this leads me to think is that, okay, this is a dangerous job that you want to be on top of. So, this is a very brain engaged job. So, that's just something I thought about when I was reading this article down here. And it really does make some sense because um, a lot of these professions are just naturally dangerous due to the size and material that they're carrying. So, that being said, what are the implications? What does this lead me as a brain injury case manager or the bystander to realize is that there are, in fact, some dangerous jobs out there, but safety is especially paramount, especially when it is dangerous by the nature of the profession. So, some professions, like the military, like first responders, like transportation, they're just naturally dangerous by nature of the job, and yet people still do it, which is honestly impressive and should be rewarded. Um, of course, precautions, you should definitely take them, especially if they are required by law. Again, I'm going to mention OSHA. If you're not familiar with OSHA laws, uh, it's definitely interesting to read up on because there are certain requirements that you should wear. You don't go into a warehouse without having a hard hat or having steel toe boots. You don't go on a construction site without having your both of those and maybe more. Maybe an orange vest if you're in transportation, maybe a hard hat, maybe further equipment. If you're in the military, you're wearing your helmet, your plate carrier, you're armed up because there are dangers there and you do need that protection. So, but these are all necessary jobs, not just because I need the transportation industry to bring me my coffee in the morning, or at least to facilitate me drinking my morning coffee. But these are necessary jobs to sustain the way of life we have now. We do need EMS. We need transportation. We especially need military. We do need wonderful people to go off and do a dangerous job to keep our country safe. We also need uh, all these kind of jobs. We need firefighters, police, EMS. Um, and that's why we should take this fairly seriously. With these are dangerous jobs. And so taking that into consideration, the implication is safety is important. Know the signs, safety. You'll hear it said, safety first, and wear the protective equipment you're supposed to wear, especially in a dangerous job. Well, with that being said, I think that will conclude what I have to say about the subject, and we can go deeper if you would like into these subjects. In fact, I like talking about the military stuff. I'm a Navy veteran myself, and um, I really enjoy finding this information um, that really brings to light that, there are some needed jobs that are, in fact, inherently dangerous, but there are protections in place and that maybe we should be a little, be grateful that people are willing to step up and do these dangerous jobs, even though it is that danger to them and danger to their brain. So, with that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. Please feel free to give us a thumbs up, maybe subscribe to this channel. We try to come out with this content weekly. And of course, we always cite our sources, and the sources will, like always, be in the description below. We always encourage that you check out those sources. But with that being said, have a great day and protect your brains.